So this afternoon, we've got Robin Dryan and Danny Haskey speaking about what we can get for free. And Robin is going to start first and do her presentation, followed by Danny.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm going to take us on a very quick run through a half a dozen sites that I think give us a bit of bang for no buck. They're less well-known ones and they're a mixed bag. Some of them are fairly amateur, some of them are very professional. Make of it what you will. I hope there's something amongst them that everyone can learn from. So let's start. The first one I want to go to is British Jury, which some of you will know about. There are two reasons for going there. One, I'll show you the general things that it offers us. And then in particular, for those of you that have ancestors in Leeds, the Leeds database is a really useful one. Okie dokie. So here's the basic entry screen to the British Jury mailing list, but it's the British Jury website. You go over to the right-hand side, and I have a problem here because I've got people obscuring where I want to go. Over here on the right, you can very simply subscribe to their mailing list. And it's a fabulous mailing list if you want any assistance at all with British Jury lookups. It's a very knowledgeable group and a very helpful group. So I recommend it. They're strict on keeping it British Jury related. So if you ask a question about immigrants to America, you'll get told off. And in fact, it's a moderated list, so they may not even let that one through to the keeper. So British Jury only, but a really useful mailing list. Far better, I find, than the general Jewish Gen discussion group or the JCR UK discussion group. So that's a plug for subscribing. Down on the left here, you'll see that there are a whole host of different databases. These are all user contributed, so some of them are very small. They might only have half a dozen entries, but they're obscure things that you mightn't find anywhere else. So for example, the circumcisions register are the Portsmouth circumcision records. So if you've got any relatives that were in Portsmouth, it's certainly well worth a look to see if they're there. Marriage databases are a mixture of things, but the one that's probably most useful to a lot of people here in Sydney is the Leeds database. And if we go to the Leeds database, again, it's user contributed, so it's not 100% comprehensive for all the Jews that were in Leeds, but bit by bit they're adding to it. And so you can search by name. And if we put in the Morrises, for example, don't need a first name if you want to get all of them and see who's there. Up pops a gazillion Morrises. Click on any one of them and they have whatever information they have managed to gather about it. The thing that I like about it is that you've got group sheets, family charts. So you can actually see what the family grouping is. You can go through and follow any of them that are highlighted, have a live link, and you can then go to that person, that individual's family. So anyone that's got relatives in Leeds, have a look. If you've got relatives in or ancestors that you're looking for in London, always check Leeds, because at least one of the family is likely to have spun off and gone to Leeds at some point in their history. So that's an English one that I think gives you quite a bit of bang for no buck. Next, I'm not going to flick backwards and forwards. I'm going to leave it on there and I'll see if this will. Has that flicked up the Gazette?
Yes, it has.
Right, okay, so I'll do it that way. This is another English one that is absolutely free for use, and it has two really useful things. Its search engine these days is appalling. I have to tell you that. It's really useless. But two things that I think is particularly handy here. If you put in naturalisation, let me go for, no, okay, not a way to go. Let me go a different way. This is just because I know this will bring me up what I'm looking for here. Was the wrong one, that's all right. Okay, list by list by list of naturalisations in England, or in the UK actually. So really useful if you're looking for when people got naturalised. If you find their names here, A, you know they got naturalised in England, and B, you know that the National Archives in England is going to have a file on them that'll have a whole lot more data and information about the family and the various members of the family, all the kids that are under age, and that changes over time. Originally it was 21, then it moved to 18, but if they're early ones, it'll be all the kids in the family that are under 21 and happen to be in England at the time. But the other thing that is really helpful here are the change of names. So if you look at this one, I don't know whether you can see on your screens, Rachel Gelfand, Shevna, okay, known as Rosa Halford. Now, that's like a gold mine. If you were looking for Rosa Halford and looking for what was her original name, there you've got it. And you've got a patronymic, which is even better. But if you look at that list, you can see numbers of them that have changed their names, and it's giving you Samuel Petrov is now known as Sam Peters. Solomon Posner has changed his name to Sidney Posner. So for that alone, I think this is a terrific resource and well worth a look. If you're looking for family and you can't find them, if you're looking for what was the original name, give it a shot, because what you might pick up is a relative. It mightn't be the exact person you're looking for, but it might be one of the relatives that'll give you some clues about what names you can then pursue to see. And the other way here of finding name changes, not just in the naturalisations, is to use the...
they've got the deed polls.
They've got deed polls. So if you... here we go. Here's one. It's a name change. So this is Dorothy Rose Schlatter. A whole lot of detail about her, and she's renounced and abandoned the surname of Tyson and the assumed name of Slater for her and her child and an infant, and then now adopting, I haven't read that right through, but they're adopting a new name. So all of those that actually formally registered a deed poll as opposed to just assuming a name, you'll find in the gazettes. And this covers the London Gazette and the Edinburgh Gazette. So it'll cover all of the UK, but not Northern Ireland, and not the Republic of Ireland. So another really useful resource for some of those tricky things that once we've got the basic births, deaths and marriages, we start looking for more details. And this is one of the places you can get more details for no expense. Now I'm going to shift my focus down to South Africa. For two databases, one database that is South African and one that's actually English, but held on this South African Jewish Roots Bank website. The general website holds a whole lot of databases. If you go down the list, you can see all the different databases they've got. If you're not looking for something for specific, if you just want to grab all while you can, go in and put in a surname to search. You can do an exact match, or you can do a similar sounding names. And I recommend doing a similar sounding names unless you've got a name like Cohen, and you're going to get 500 Cohens and then all the variations. If you have a less common name like Drian, put in the similar sounding names, because in my distant relatives in South Africa spelt it differently from everybody else. So you'll see when we click up to see what they've got, while it gives me a whole lot of rubbish, it's not rubbish, it's not stuff that's useful to me. Duramo, no relation. And the Dawns and the Drans aren't. But all of these Druians, D-R-U-I-A-Ns, are related. So you can see there's various spellings here. This Druin is also, these Druyons I haven't looked at, but are possibly, and then you've got the Druyan spelling. So well worth a look. Getting them all in one can be a bit overwhelming, but you just work your way through and see what's there that is useful. They've got quite a few passenger lists. They've got some naturalizations. They've got deaths. And some of these will give you clues that there are records in the South African archives. So if you find a naturalization on this list, then go and look at the Republic of South Africa National Archives website and pull up the file. Now, their National Archives don't have a copy service. You actually have to hire someone to go in. But I've learnt recently that the South African Genealogy Society runs that service. So it's a fee for service, but you contact them and ask if somebody will go and retrieve X file for you, and they'll go in and make a photocopy and or film it and send you the digital images. So again, a useful thing for finding where other records might be. This is just a list of indexes, but pointers to where you'll find other information. If you don't know that you have South African relatives, but you have relatives from Poland, Germany, Lithuania, Latvia, it's always worth doing a search in South Africa, because quite a lot of the families split their sons, sent one to England, one to America, one to South Africa, one to Australia, or any selection of those, to see where the family might relocate to. And so you think, oh, I don't know anyone in South Africa, but then find that in fact, your grandfather or your great-grandfather had a cousin that was sent to South Africa and didn't rejoin the family, stayed there and made a life for themselves, and you've got a whole lot of relatives in South Africa. So I say don't discount it, go looking and see what's there. The other one that's on their website, which you might have just noticed up here, is actually a London database. It's the Poor Jews Temporary Shelter Database. And it was used by Jews travelling, say, from Lithuania and going through to South Africa or coming on to Australia. They arrive at the port in England. They've got the boat across from, usually from Libau or Bremen. They need somewhere to stay for a couple of days until they join their ship for America or Australia or South Africa or wherever it is they're going. And they check into the temporary shelter, not just because it's cheap, but they can also get a kosher meal there. And they can meet other Jews there. They've probably been referred by somebody else in the family that's gone before them. So it's a place where they stop for maximum of 2 weeks. If they stopped on the way, there's quite a bit of information about them. This is only one part of their historical database, but it's the only one for which the registers still survive. So it's a fairly limited period from about 1890 to about 1910, I think. It used to have a date on it, no longer does. But again, you go through, you find where they came from, how old they are, how long they stayed. And if you click on one of them and then view it, there's more information there. So it tells you where he was born, what his occupation is. And the thing that is really useful is the ship that they then went to wherever they were going. So this one's going to Africa, and he went on the Goth. So if it hasn't come up in the list of arrivals that the South Africans have indexed, you can go looking for the manifest for the Goth out of England. And the other thing that's even more important, because these are not indexed anywhere, is occasionally it tells you which ship they arrived on in England. Now, there are very few indexes for European ships coming into the UK. Ancestry's just started to index a few, but there are no extant English indexes, and the National Archives in England has not indexed them, but they do have the records if you know what ship they came on and you know what date. So you've got a ship's name here, the Strauss, and you know they entered the shelter on the 22nd of December in 1902. So you can look within a day or two in the British archives to find that manifest. And then you can get the record of them actually arriving in England. Now that's a real find. It's not on every record, but it's on some of the records, and really useful if you're trying to find out what your ancestors' movements were and how they got to where they got. Some of them you'll find are saying that they're going to Africa, but they end up staying on the ship and coming to Australia. Some of them say they're going to Africa, but they never left England. So they left the shelter with the intention of getting on a boat to go to Africa, but didn't at the last minute go and stayed in England. But again, a really useful and free resource. Now I'm going to flick to a really useful free Gravestone picture library for South Africa. Now this has only recently actually indexed all its holdings. You used to have to go cemetery by cemetery, and they're arranged by province. So you can actually, on their lead-in page, I've taken us straight to the search page, but on the lead-in page you can choose a province if you wish, and search for all the Jewish cemeteries in that province. So these are both Jewish and non-Jewish, general cemeteries that have Jewish sections. And again, you've got a search by name. And so I've picked some kranzes, and here's one that I know is one of my relatives. And I go to his headstone, and there's a beautiful, fabulous photo of it. And it tells me that up here, where he is. So he's in the Rheinsword Cemetery in Benoni in Gauting's the province. So that's, again, a really useful thing. And as I said before, the thing about tracing wider family than just the direct line is that with these pictures, if you find a surname, if you've got again, not a Cohen surname, but a Krantz surname, there's only a half a dozen Krantzes in this index. I can take every one of them and I can actually get from the headstones where they've got them their Hebrew names and see the likelihood of relations, and finding extended family in these godforsaken places. Like, you know, I would not have gone looking in Benoni. I knew that there were Kranzes in South Africa, but I thought they were in Johannesburg and Cape Town. So this one's a really useful one. And the photos are generally very good. A lot of them have been taken by people that are camera people. And so down here, they've actually got, you know, the details of what sort of cameras they used, etc. Some of them have got exposure details and all the rest of it, but they tend to be fairly high quality photos, which is really nice because a lot of the cemetery ones that we see are not. That's my other freebie in South Africa that I think is a really useful website. Moving along, we're now going to flick back to Israel. We're flicking back to Europe. We're going to Czechia. And these are the Prague registrations. Now, if you were a family that moved from somewhere else into Prague, you had to register. And these are the registers from 1850 to 1914. Searchable by name, you can flick it to English, which gives you some stuff. I've found putting the surname in down here rather than up here works best. So let's go for a Pollock, and you'll see you get a gazillion of them. You can sort them alphabetically, or you can sort them by age. You can find who's the oldest Pollock. Well, there's a whole lot that we don't have dates for. If we keep going through, we'll eventually get a birth date. Okay, so the oldest one in this lot is Ludwig, who was born in 1768. Let's have a look at him. Come on, Ludwig. Let's go. Right. Now, the wonderful thing about these registration records is that they give you places that they've come from, places of birth, and dates of birth, and their family groupings. So where there are children in the family, they get registered too. This is obviously two elderly people who have moved into Prague on their own, who no longer have children living with them. But again, a really useful one, and I encourage anybody that also has family in Hungary or has people particularly in Vienna, but in other places in Austria. There was a lot of movement between those countries. And so you may find some of the family turns up in Prague in these indexes. Well worth a search because of the detail of the family information that it provides. And as I say, the English functioning of it is getting better and better. When it first started, it was a nightmare. It didn't work properly. But it's now working really well. And with that in mind, I'm going next to Austria because this also has some Czech and Prague data. And the general one that most of you probably know is GenTeam, but if you don't know it, welcome to GenTeam. It's another fantastic free resource. You do have to register. So the first time that you come in, if you aren't already registered, so mine comes in ready to log in, but the first time you go to it, it will ask you to register or here, create an account and log in. And again, you've got a gazillion different databases. You can search, you can go in and search individual databases and they'll tell you which ones are Jewish ones, which ones are Catholic, converts, whatever. Or you can do a general search, do an overall search. And that's always where I start and see whether if for the name I'm looking, there's only a half a dozen entries across all databases, it's quicker to go by the name and just get those half dozen rather than having to go through every individual database. If, on the other hand, you've got a surname you're searching like Pollock, here there are going to be 1,000, and you might want to go database by database as a more efficient way of searching for what you want. But let's put in, what will we put in here? Let's go Bergman. Okay, I've come a list here. I always ignore that because I'm not quite sure how they're going to spell the name I'm looking for, the first name I'm looking for. So I go here. And what you get are a list of hits for Bergman, sorted alphabetically by first name. This is the date of the record that they've indexed, and this is what the database it's coming from. So you can see here, and you can see over here, that it's got more than just, well, it's basically an Austrian database. They certainly have more than just Austria. So you're also getting some Czech, Slovenian, Slovakian, German records have been indexed in this collection of databases. If we go to, if you want to see one, you go click on the little icon. And this is a birth. You've got, if it's a 1, it's a birth, 2 is a marriage, 3 is a burial. This is a birth record for Abraham Bergman, born in Vienna in 1916, father's name and mother's name, including maiden name, which is very useful. We often don't get that. It's not the record, it's an index. But again, a really useful thing. And this one would tell you that if you went looking for the original birth registration, it's in Vienna, as opposed to anywhere else in Austria. So that's that. I can't click out it. And there we go. So again, this is a huge database growing all the time. So if you register for their emails, you'll get regular news of what they've updated. Otherwise, simply, if you don't want to be bothered with more email, just go in once every 6 months and see what's new, what's come up that's new. Because they update this one regularly, and I think it's a really useful one. Now, I didn't get a death. Let's go to, where are they? Jewish cemeteries. Let's go. Okay, so here's Albert Bergman. This gives you what his address was when he died. So that's really useful. Tells you his date of death, his age, his place of death, date of burial. He's in Zentralfriedhof, section 4, group 2. Now they are all locational information about how to find him in that cemetery. There is another database that I'm going to take you to next that will give you some more information about where to find those graves. This is a very recent, this is a 1982 one. Some of the earlier ones have no more information that it's in this section of this cemetery. But the next database that I'm going to take you to which is a database from the AJGS, which is the Jewish community in Vienna. He's not there. How interesting. Oh, that's because it's too recent. These are the older ones. I don't know what date this particular database is on, goes to. I suspect it probably doesn't go much past the 1950s, but I'd have to check that. But again, it's giving you quite a bit more information, and it will tell you whether or not there is a picture of that headstone. So it's covering an overlapping set of information, but don't just use one, use both, because you'll often pick up information in one that isn't given to you in the other one. And that's about where I'm going to stop and hand you over to Danny, who's going to show you some other interesting places where you can get lots of bang for no buck.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you're all having a lovely day. I will share my screen. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Trove, and then I'm going to spend most of my talk talking about pictures. But I thought I would just, does everybody know about Trove? Yeah, most people will know about the newspapers. So Trove has digital copies of as many newspapers as they can get in. It's, if you're looking, it's the first place to start for newspapers in Australia. They just did a very large collection of Jewish newspapers in Australia. I'm not going to talk about the newspapers today, because what I might do is put together a big deep dive talk, just really going into what you can get on Trove. I just want to quickly cover a couple of the less well-known areas in Trove. And so I'm going to go into categories. So these are the categories of things that Trove has. So what Trove does, of course, is it aggregates a lot of stuff from collections around Australia, and they're now developing these partnerships to bring data in for everyone to access. So obviously they've got newspapers and gazettes, they've got magazines and newsletters, images, research and reports, like books, libraries, so that the whole library catalogue is accessible, really. Diaries, letters and archives, I'm going to touch on in a minute. Music, video, the people and organisations is really interesting as well. And I'm just going to start here with websites, because what Trove has done is there's a thing called the Australian Web Archive. So if you're looking for a really old website, when I say old, we're talking like 2004, 2008, you can access the whole, a lot of the websites have been archived. So you can get access to that archive. Besides, there are some restrictions which are explained in this area here. Trove has that information in their help section as to what is being kept off, but there's a huge amount of stuff. So if I just go here and I just put in, if I just put in my own surname, and I've just, you can see here that I've just chosen to look in websites, and I don't own a kennel. Dr. Haskell Leventhal is an academic who gave me the cold shoulder when I tried to contact her. She's related somehow, we just don't know how. This is my mother. This is her old Inner West Therapy listing from when she worked at a centre in the inner west. And so this is a snapshot that was taken from the 15th of June. So if you're looking for, if you know that somebody, you know, was listed on a website, or they've passed away and there was a biography on an old website years ago, you might be able to find it this way. There's Leventhal there. That's my uncle. This is my sister. So this one's from 2017. So this was an article. There we go. This is an article about, that my sister wrote. There we go. It's an article she wrote in 2016. And this is my sister's current website. My brother. So you can see that's my uncle. That's so this is possibly, so this is a YouTube link, and Pierre Haskey is a cousin. We don't know how, but he's in France. So you can see it's got stuff from all over the world. And that's a 2003 ABC Sydney thing about my brother. So you can put a name in and find information. So on a website. Now, if we're talking about, if we're going back a couple of generations and we're talking about stuff that's much older, the Diaries, Letters and Archive category has both published and unpublished information. So like letters, diaries, handwritten notes, personal photographs. So if somebody has donated, for example, if somebody's donated their papers to an institution, there could be an index of it here. So if I do the same thing with my surname, I don't know that it'll work as well. Oh, there we go. So this is, I don't know what, but it's I don't know how it's not related to me, but this is me. This is a database. This is actually on a database that I joined, that's got all my old theatre credits and stuff like that. So if somebody's researching me in the future and they may find this source and see that at some stage I was a costume designer. I had somebody recently who Googled me and said, oh, there were a whole lot of people with your name who did all sorts of different things. And I had to turn around her and say, no, actually, they're all me. So if I don't write my own story, someone's going to get very, very, very confused. So the last little thing I just want to bring to your attention, if you've got family in Australia, is this search category here called people and organisations. So what it does is it means you can do a name search and find things. Everyone's kind of on a database somewhere, and you can see here that there's a whole bunch of Trove partners that have contributed to this. So if I go people and organisations and I do that again, you can see that there's me, there's Pierre, this is my father. So when I click on my dad, there's Libraries Australia has something. I suspect this is my dad's thesis. That is, all the theses get handed to the National Library of Australia. So I can just follow that breadcrumb. The National Libraries of Australia then has a persistent identifier. So once you put something in there, they have an identifier that shows you up. My aunt has the same thing. So this one, okay, I get mentioned for this person here. Right, so Kay Adshead, who I have no memory at all. I probably worked, if she's a playwright, I must have worked on a play. So it's in the Ausstage database. There's a link to the Ausstage database I know that I have credits in the Ozstage database. So I don't know how it linked. I must have worked on a play that she wrote. But it's a way of following a breadcrumb through there, and it's a different way of using Trove. So I'm going to spend the rest of my talk talking about, I know a lot of people are getting to a stage where they're starting to write up you're starting to write your histories. You get all this data and you go, what do I want to do with it? Well, you got to start writing the stories, and you will have noticed in Kosher Koala, since I took over for Robin, that I use a lot of pictures. I really, really like illustrating things with pictures. So, but the thing is, you have to be very mindful of things like copyright. So I'm just going to explain to you how I get my pictures, how you can get pictures for free, and the issues that you need to look at around copyright. So, sorry, just turning my notes over. So, where do we start? Well, the obvious place to start is your own home. Look in your photo albums, go beyond the photos of the faces and see if there are photos in there of places and of things that illustrate the lives of your parents. Travel photos. I've got photos of my grandmother with all her, my great-grandmother with all her equestrian stuff that really tells her story beautifully. So these are photos that I took in Krakow of various places. So I'm going to use Krakow as a bit of a case study today, because it's a beautiful place. There's lots of beautiful photographs there, and I'm going to be writing up the stories of my family that came from Krakow fairly soon. But these are stories that I took, these are photos that I took that I'm putting up on a blog that I'm developing. It was a blog that I wrote when I was traveling that I'm now developing as a site to go with a new brand that I'm putting together. And so photographs that you took yourself, you can use as many of them as you want, or that you own, you can use them any way you want because you own the copyright. So if you went visiting an ancestral town and you took a photograph, like this photo here, for example, oh, there we go. This photo here, this little building is actually used to be the chicken slaughterhouse. It's now a takeaway. It does, what was it? It was pork rolls or something very, very unkosher. But it used to be 100 years ago, members of my family were shochettes in there slaughtering chickens. And so I took lots of photos of that place, and obviously of other places like the square, the building here, or actually there was a building just up here that the family actually lived in, and that's Helena Rubinstein's. She had something to do with that as well. So and that's the synagogue, and this is actually a big town square that we're in here. So you know, the quality of the photos you need to make your own judgment call on, but I can use any of these photos because I own them. I own the copyright. So the problem was that most of my family left Krakow before the 1890s. So if I wanted to find pictures of them, if I wanted to find pictures of what Krakow looked like when they were there, I have to go somewhere else. And the obvious first place to start to get the low-hanging fruit is Google. So if I want to find pictures of Krakow in, say, the 1890s, if I put Krakow plus 1890 into Google, it will bring up, obviously first, it will bring up the sites. But if I click on this bit here, images, it will bring up pictures, beautiful pictures of Krakow from the 19th century. Aren't they gorgeous? The problem is the first, well, it's almost the first 7 photos are all owned by a company called Alamy.com. Alamy is a stock photo company. If I want any of these from where I see it from these sites, I have to buy them. I have to buy the license. The images themselves are probably in the public domain. So that means that they're probably freely available if I have the book that they come from. So if you click on any of these, you can see that the image that they put up has this thing called a watermark on it. Now, I could download this image. It's quite a good size. I could sit in Photoshop and I could try and get rid of this watermark, but that would just take me a very, very long time. I suspect what Alamy have started and the other stock photo companies are starting to do is to go through and find old books and license and put the photos up for license. So it's a bit frustrating, but there are other ways of finding old pictures like that. So, but the low-hanging fruit will be on sites like Wikipedia. So Wikipedia, does anybody not know what Wikipedia is? Good. I can only see half a dozen people, by the way. So obviously Wikipedia is the free encyclopedia. So most images on Wikipedia, if I go to the Krakow page on Wikipedia, are sourced from a place called Wikimedia Commons. And if I scroll down, there's the flower vendor in the Rynek, first autochrome in Poland dated 1912. So if I click on here, that's the image, which is really beautiful. And it's got the information here, who took it, when it was, what that person's birth date was. So it was taken in 1912. The important information here is this photo is in the public domain, which means it's free. Anyone can use it for anything. To download it, there's a couple of ways to do it. If you click on the image, and that thing comes up, then what you do is, if you're on a PC, you right mouse click and it brings up this here and you go save image as. You can either save it straight to your downloads folder, or you just go save image as. It'll bring it up. It'll bring up a thing. It'll ask you where you want to save it to. I'm just going to save this to my downloads folder. You can pick where you want to save it, and then you just save it, and it will download the image to your desktop. If the image is too small and you want a bigger version of it, if I look at this map here, and I love using old maps and beautiful old graphics. Now, so this is a view of Krakow near the end of the 16th century. It is in the public domain. If, for example, I want to download this and put it on my wall, you can't print a low resolution copy. You need to do a high resolution copy. So the size of this preview is 800 by 261 pixels, which is quite small. But here you can see that there are a bunch of other resolutions. And if I click on this one, and then I click on, this is a huge image. So if you download that, you will be able to print it. Doesn't look great on the screen, but you'll both be able to kind of go in and have a really good look around, but you'll also be able to print it. So if, for example, you wanted to include that in a printed book, you would get the highest resolution version that you can find. Otherwise, you will get a very, very grainy image. And anything in the public domain you can use for free. Now, there are other images which for example, this, no, not Casimir. Okay, these ones up here, for example, so the Krakow Main Market Square, which come under a thing called Creative Commons. So this photograph was taken by Andrei Obtrevsky. It's his own work. He has put it up here under a Creative Commons license, which means that any of us can use this photo in our narratives for personal reasons, for creative reasons. We can't use it for commercial reasons. If you want to use the image in a book that you intend to publish and charge people for, you still have to clear the copyright. And I'll talk about how to do that in a minute. So if you click on the link there, it will take you to creativecommons.org and give you the conditions of the Creative Commons license. And there's a few different licenses have different conditions. And I'm actually, in the next Kosher Koala, there will be an article going on this going into greater detail. So if the image comes from an institution, the captions underneath should explain it. So let me just see if I can find. Here's one I made earlier, which I forgot to do. Oh, actually, no, I know exactly where I can do. All right, so in Trove, they have images, maps, and artifacts, right? So if I put my great-great-great-grandfather's name in there, it will come up with this picture, which is in the State Library of Victoria. Now, this one's out of copyright, but if it was a more recent image that was not out of copyright, it would give you the details of the copyright holder there, whether it's held by an institution or an individual. Copyright is active until 70 years after the death of the owner. If it's owned by an institution, I'm not 100% sure what the rules are as far as when it expires, because I know, for example, the Disney Corporation just makes a new film. So that's why we keep getting new Snow Whites and new versions of Aladdin, whether it's an animated or a live action, because they're cementing their copyright of that intellectual property. So as far as images go, even, for example, if you take a photo of an artwork in a gallery, you have to be very mindful of how you use that image in anything that you publish, because the image itself, the artwork, holds copyright. So the artist owns the copyright of that image. If the piece of art is really, really old, obviously copyright doesn't exist. So if you're using a, if you're taking a photo of Rembrandt or the Mona Lisa, you can do whatever you like with it. But I was recently in the State Library, in the New South Wales gallery, and saw an Aboriginal piece of Aboriginal art that absolutely floored me, and so I took a photo of that so that I can use it as wallpaper on my iPad, because it was so exquisitely beautiful. I can't use it anywhere else. I can't put it in a book. I can't do anything without getting the permission of the copyright holder. So with institutions, let me see if migrant children in a running race. Oh no, okay. So copyright's undetermined on this image. That's interesting. This one. Okay, I know where the copyright's held on this one. Oh. So the copyright for this image, even though the creator was unknown, so is actually held by Wollongong City Library, because I've used this image. So even though it was taken in 1937, there are restrictions on use. So I wrote to the Wollongong City Library, and so this shop here in the middle here, it's my grandfather's shop, and I stumbled across this image, flabbergasted, and so I wanted to use it in a kosher koala article. So I simply emailed them and asked permission. And so if I go back to some of the images in for Krakow, a lot of some really nice images are actually off things like travel sites or Pinterest. And so you need to drill down, especially with Pinterest. If you find images on Pinterest, they've actually been sourced from other places. So you have to, if you use Pinterest, you have to go in, and then you have to click on the photo to figure out where they got it from. And so this has come to a dead end. They've downloaded this from goodness knows where. So given that that's an old photo, it might be out of copyright, but newer photos, you kind of need to make your absolute best effort to figure out where the photos are from. And if they're nice photos, for example, that one, which is from a travel website, it's highly likely that was taken by a professional photographer. So if you really, really, really like a picture, figure out who took it, or figure out which website it was sitting on, and email them and ask if you can use it. I often, if I find a news report on, a cemetery that's been restored, or an event that's happened, there's some photos around, and even if there aren't photos around, I will contact the organization and ask for photos, or ask for permission to use the photos on the website. Once you have that permission in writing, you file the email and be nice and share it with them. So the worst thing that will happen if you find a photo that you really want to use is, the worst thing that will happen is they'll say, no, you can't use it. The second worst thing that'll happen is they'll ask you for money. If you don't want to pay, you can plead your case back to them as to why you shouldn't have to. And I did that once, and it worked. They wanted to charge me some money for something for Prince Henry Museum, and I wrote back and said, look, I'm really sorry, we're a not-for-profit organisation, we have no money, but we're doing stuff on diseases. It was a portrait of the people who found the polio virus, and it was a piece of art, and the copyright was held by the GlaxoSmithKline Foundation, and they said, yep, you can use it, no problem. And so I was able to put that on the website of the exhibition. But under no circumstances at all should you just use it anyway, because as Clive Palmer found out, it can be an extremely expensive mistake to violate someone's copyright. So with that, I'm happy to open to any questions about getting free images, and I'll stop sharing and have a chat.
Yes, I inherited my father's wartime photo album of Tobruk, the bombing,
Yes.
the siege of Tobruk. And I believe I own the copyright to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But they're photos that your father took?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Except there's one roll of film that came from the camera of a German airman, I believe, he'd shot the guy, and he got the camera and
Okay.
developed it,
Well,
you know,
okay.
in the dark room in Tobruk.
Did your father die more than 70 years ago?
No, he
Right.
died in 1970.
Okay. The copyright extends from up until 70 years after the death of the copyright holder. So you don't actually own the copyright. Your father owns the copyright, but because you are the executive of your father's estate.
No, I wasn't the executor. I'm a beneficiary.
Okay, sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Because you're the beneficiary of your father's estate.
We got it through mummy.
Yeah, because but he holds the copyright, but it extends until 70 years after his death. So therefore, if he died in 1970, then it's
Another 20 years.
Yeah.
Another 20 years.
Another 20 years, yeah. So you can publish a book, or you can do what you want with those
other family photos.
Yeah, like basic family photos are a grey area, because technically speaking, the person who took the photo technically owns the copyright. But the thing is that family photos get shared around. So you could argue, I mean, I don't know if there are any lawyers with us today, but you can argue that
it's not my area, yeah.
That it's a kind of collectively owned copyright because it's owned by the family. So I don't know what the case law is. I don't know, if a one family member sues another family member for breach of copyright because somebody used a photo that they took or their mother took or something. I have had situations where I have been asked to remove photographs off my heritage, for example, because somebody was in a photo, or somebody's parent was in a photo. They didn't like the photo. They found it undignified. It was two people kissing on a beach. It was very, I liked the photo, but I understood her discomfort. And so that was just out of respect. Now, technically speaking, I didn't own the copyright in that photo either, because I don't know who took it, but it was given to me by a cousin. So you just have to be mindful of where you get things from.
My sister scanned this photo album also.
Sorry?
My sister also scanned this photo album and saved it to disc. And apparently she's made some copies of that available.
She's allowed to, because, I
understand some of it's ended up on some national thing. What's that situation now?
Well, the family owns the copyright. So as long as there's an indication on, if they've ended up in a collection, for example.
I think it was in something to do with this War
Memorial, yes. So you could go onto the War Memorial site and you could check what the attribution is. As long as your sister put your father's name on there, and some indication,
because when I've put my things in there, the computers turned it around and put Norm Coleman's War, and I didn't put that in there, so it's kind of connected into that other website, even though I hadn't put that in there.
I don't understand what you're saying, Sarah. I don't understand. Are you talking about searches that you've done?
No, because I scanned some of my father's photos as well. Right? Yeah. And my computers recognise them as being the same as it's on this War Memorial or whatever website.
Okay, that means that I don't know how when you say you've scanned it, and then did you do an image search or?
No, my computer, I've got an Apple, and it just did it for itself.
No, it didn't do it for itself, Sarah, because it doesn't have a mind of its own. You did something that triggered it to match the image. Okay.
My father's photo.
Okay. So computers can't do that yet. Eventually, it might be able to, but right now, it can't do that. Look, obviously, your sister may have. Has obviously contributed to something at the War Memorial. it will have the War Memorial are very good with all this stuff. If you find those photos on the War Memorial site and look for the attribution, it should have the information there. But copyright survives 70 years after the owner dies. So you own it for another 20 years, and then after that, it expires.
Because one of my sons actually discovered this when he went to something with his work. He was working for a
If you, for example, take that photo album, turn it into a coffee table book, you will then own the copyright on the coffee table book. So you would need to speak to an intellectual property lawyer as to whether then that maintains your copyright in the photographs. If you've got hold of if you own the original photographs, then that will limit the ability of people to actually do anything with it. And then it will depend on whether you want to sue people for breach of copyright if they use the photos. That is completely up to you whether you want to make that, do that. But as Clive Palmer found out to his detriment, if you use people's photos in a public context, and in fact, I saw a post from a friend of mine who's a teacher who's been reading storybooks online, who's had to stop doing it because somebody threatened him with copyright. So now he's looking for kids' books that are out of copyright so that he can read them as storytime books. So,
okay, thanks.
Go figure.
I have a question.
Yes, James.
Yes, I just wanted to know which is the best way to go to make a simple family book. I was thinking of just making it for my own family to give copies to them. I didn't want to publish it as such for everyone to buy.
Absolutely.
Where do you think would be the best place to go?
Okay. Well, I do this. So, and I'm in the process of trying to do it as a living. So I will give you, I'm definitely going to be running workshops on this. There's a couple of ways you can do it. How are your word processing skills with things like Word? Or are you a Mac or a PC person?
Mac.
You're a Mac person. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have Pages?
Yes.
Mac.
Yes.
Yes.
I have.
Yes, I use Pages in Mac. I love Pages. It's
right.
Very user friendly. So Pages, what the Mac people have actually done is they used to have iBook and Pages as separate programs. They've now rolled iBooks Author into Pages. So my suggestion would be to go to Pages, to press Apple N, and it will bring up templates, and you scroll down and they have book templates.
Oh, well.
So you pick the one you like, you fiddle around. If you would like an hour of tutoring at some stage on how to kind of figure out the nuances of it, I'm more than happy to give you an hour.
Thank you.
to show you some of the tips and tricks, because I'm a pretty expert user. For people, I think Word is getting better for people that don't use Macs and are PC people. Word is getting better at it. Basically, you want a desktop publishing app. You will then be able to output your final, once you've kind of put your book together and it made it pretty, and using templates is really good for that because it gives you a lot of visual style and coordination, and you then just can put in your content and it gives you all the style already.
Thank you.
So I think Word has book templates in it in their desktop publishing kind of iteration. The other thing you can use, which is really useful and which I'm going to kind of start playing around in, is a program, an online service called Canva. Does anybody not know what Canva is? Or no? So canva.com, it's called an Australian unicorn. It's a startup that started in Australia and is now worth more than $1 billion. It's basically a graphic design platform with lots and lots of templates. You can sign up for free. There's a whole lot of free stuff you can do, but then there's the good stuff, of course, is in the pro side. But I've used it for all sorts of very simple things. They have a book template as well. So again, it's just kind of a learning curve. You just have to learn
Thank you.
the basics of it. But James, if you're a Mac user, I would definitely recommend Pages,
Yeah,
because
thank you. That's great.
it's fantastic. And actually, let me, Robin, do you want to answer anybody's questions while I find what I'm going to try and find? Here we go.
Any questions for Robin?
I've got a question regarding copyright.
Yes.
I've taken photos of my family's original handwritten records in the Vienna, in the Kultusgemeinde.
Yeah.
What's the situation regarding copyright if I choose to use those actual photos?
You own the photos, and I don't think copyright applies to the records because they're government held records. So you can use them to your heart's content.
Okay, because I took the photos some years ago when basically access was completely open to anybody, but now I believe it's changed, and you need to register, and I think they even charge. I mean, would that? That
won't affect it. That won't affect it. No,
so
you've got a photo of the record. It's your photo, and you took it yourself, and you took it with permission.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
So go for your life. Just to give people an idea of what you can do in where is it? There it is. What you can do in Pages. This is a redacted version of something I have done recently for somebody.
Oh, wow.
Family history of the Pereira family. This is an image. This is a picture made by Joseph Lisette. I took it off the State Library of New South Wales website, which I've credited here, but it's out of copyright. So I did actually clean it up as well. I did a bit of Photoshop magic on it because it was a bit dull and it had some scratches on it. I've done an inside white page so that when it's printed, the inside cover is done. I managed to trace this person. This is redacted, so any living people are now, or the first 3 generations are redacted. But I traced this person through 7 generations back to her Jewish ancestor. These 2 generations are Jewish. This person, these 5 generations became Baptists. And then this person's father was an Anglican minister. But just to show you what you can do, this is the book.
That's wonderful. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. So and as far as images go, National Archives.
Yeah, I've got lots of images.
Yeah, these are all kind of National Archive things. That's an out of copyright picture that illustrates. This is ticket of leave. That's from Trove, the coroner's inquest into an ancestor's death. That picture of Springvale today is a screenshot I took from Google Street View. So I got Google Street View up on my thing, and then took a screenshot of it and edited it down. These are all on Wikipedia. These images are generally Creative Commons. This picture here was taken for me by the secretary at Weddonshire Council. When I was doing my research, I discovered that George Henley Pereira had been a councilman. I got in touch with the local history society. They eventually got back to me with somebody had written his history. So because this is private, like the person who's receiving it, it's an individual. I haven't actually reached out to kind of ask for permission. I kind of figure, yeah, they'll let me do it. But I wanted to see if there were, because he was councillor, I wanted to see if there was a photo of him. So I rang the council, and this picture is actually on the wall in the council chambers. And so you can see the reflections in there. And she was so apologetic that that was the best she could do. I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. And then the next generation down, the local history society sent me that picture of Selby Vincent and his wife.
Wonderful.
And so you know, it's you just have to ask. And so yeah, there I redacted stuff. And that is also a Creative Commons image, and it's more or less sort of a similar point, a similar spot that the front cover picture was taken from, sort of. But I thought that was a nice way to put on the back of the book. So this is all just done in Pages, and that is a beautiful picture, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, I've got the same picture.
Yeah, he did some.
How do you publish this though? Did you print it out yourself, or did you?
No. So at this stage, I'm still waiting. There's still in the big full one. I'm still waiting for the person who commissioned it to come back with a forward to put in there. He is going to have it printed. He's looking up print on demand. I'm in the process of collating some prices on print on demand platforms. There is a platform called Lulu, LULU.com, where, so what you do is you format, once you've got your book formatted in your platform of choice, in your publisher of choice, you output it as a PDF. So you need to be aware of what size you're doing. I find obviously A4 landscape is a good size because it's nice on the table. But you can, if you want to do it bigger or smaller, that's fine. But what I would do is make a decision about where you're going to publish it. When I say publish, I mean how you're going to output it. So are you just going to send everyone a PDF? You can do that. There are some fabulous things now that I'm looking into, which are like page flippers. There are, you can output it as an ebook, which is so when you export the file, once you've finished everything, you go up to File, Export, and it gives you a whole bunch of choices. And one of the things you'll probably see in the menu is EPUB. And particularly if you've got things like you can embed in these publications audio clips, video clips, animations, all sorts of stuff, because and hyperlinks. My intention is actually to have my narrative as a hyperlinked document. And so if you output it as an EPUB, which is basically an ebook, you can then put that up on iBooks as a private book, send the link to your family, and they can download it, and then they can look at it in their iPads or on their laptops, and all the links will be live, and they can look at one of my friends is going to do one with videos and audio files that she's got of her mother and stuff like that. So it means you can bring it to life. If you want to do a hard copy, a paper copy, you have to think about it in terms of having a left and a right page. So think about it think of your layout in terms of how it's going to flip. So for example, you may want to put white pages in between some things so that a new chapter starts on the right hand side and not on the left hand side. Things like that. Like, think about the layout. There's all sorts of little flip book apps that you can download to check these things in. And the Next Kosher Koala may even be a flip book when you look at it online. And then once you're happy with it, you output the PDF. If you upload it to somewhere like Lulu, you can people can pay to have it printed. They'll pay for the printing themselves. So if you've got a huge family that you want to share it with, and you don't want to be the person up for the cost of the actual printing, you're not charging for the book. What you're doing is you're saying, I've made my book. You can download the e-version for free. If you want a hard copy version, click the link and Lulu will print it and ship it.
Thank you.
So
That's wonderful. Thank you.
they're not, like, obviously one-off printing isn't cheap, but it's getting cheaper. Last time I looked, a single copy, even at Officeworks, was $50 up to 20, 30 pages. So there's all sorts of Australian vendors, and if you give me a couple of weeks, I'll have a list. So James, you and I will keep in touch, and
Thank you.
and I might do a whole workshop on this once I've got myself sorted.
Lovely.
All right. Any other questions, either for Robin or for Danny? Did everybody notice that on the chat, Kim put up a couple of links that you might want to check out?
No, I didn't. Oh, there we go. Copyright.org. Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And yes, and copyright.org actually has a, and I will have a link to this actually in Kosher Koala. There is actually a link to copyright for family historians. There's a fact sheet on that. So if you go to copyright.org.au and click on fact sheets, and then click on, and then you'll see what there is, and put family history in the search box. There is actually a copyright fact sheet for family historians, but I will have a link to that in the next Kosher Koala, which will be out in early August.
Wonderful.
So yeah, and a lot of the stuff that I talked about, I'll go into a little bit more detail. So yeah, AFFHO, the Australian Federation of Family History Organisations, excellent organisation, has the copyright implications for family history societies. So just be aware, and particularly also if you're using other people's stuff. I mean, I probably should go back to the society that sent me that family history and ask if that person that wrote it is still alive, because they actually, they submitted it to. Yes, Robin.
Robin needs to unmute. There she goes.
I just want to say it's not just other people's photos. If you're using other people's research, please, please either clear copyright, at the very least acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally
and
agree.
It's as simple as, I mean, besides talking to that person, the other simple thing is, if you're putting a narrative together, have a page of acknowledgements at the back and just say, you know, this research was made possible by, you know, research as well by, you know, and you just list all the people that contributed. I mean, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and none of us really could have, very few of us have started from a standing start. I know some have, obviously, but I certainly didn't. There are several people that I would have on that list who gave me reams of data. So, you know, we're all eternally grateful to the people that help us.